The 1980s. So we're going to start with the election of 1980. Of course, with the 1970s, we just finished talking about the Iranian hostage crisis and President Carter. Well, President Carter is up for election in 1980 and will be nominated by the Democrats for a second term. The Republicans nominate Ronald Reagan, former actor, World War II veteran like Jimmy Carter, but he had become very famous as an actor and was then serving as the governor of California. That's Reagan on the left and Jimmy Carter on the right. When it comes down to the election, Reagan ends up winning the Electoral College 489 to 49. A bit of a landslide. He wins the popular vote by about 8.5 million, so it's a little over the average. I've been telling you the 20th century was between 5 and 7 million, so he's a little over average in his victory over Jimmy Carter. Carter, of course, was hurt by the Iranian hostage crisis and Iran's refusal to release the hostages until Carter was out of office. There's the map. Carter, of course, carries Georgia, his home state. He picks up West Virginia and Maryland. Let's see, where else? Minnesota and Rhode Island are all ones that he picks up, as well as Hawaii. The rest go to Reagan. All right, so looking at Ronald Reagan, he was a former actor, like I said. He was the governor of California at the time. In March of 1981, John Hinckley Jr. attempted to assassinate him. So that's just a few months after he took office. Ronald Reagan, to date, is the last president that someone attempted to assassinate. And that's a picture of John Hinckley Jr. Of course, that's his mugshot. John Hinckley Jr. spent the better part of the last 35 years in a mental institution. He was declared not guilty, but because of mental issues. And what happened was he tried to assassinate President Reagan to impress an actress, and that's the actress, that's Jodie Foster. Right? And he thought that would basically get him a date with her. Not real sure. Okay. There's a picture of the assassination attempt that happened in Washington, D.C., outside of a hotel that President Reagan was leaving at the time. And you can see people did get hit and several people were seriously injured, including President Reagan. A bullet was lodged in his chest very close to his heart. He did survive the attack, though, and then was rushed to the hospital, and the surgery was successful. Ronald Reagan is mostly remembered for his dealings with the Soviet Union and the Cold War. When Reagan gets into office, he really ups the rhetoric. He's very harsh about the U.S. relationship with the Soviet Union and basically how we're letting them win the Cold War and not doing enough to stop them. In one speech, he refers to the USSR as the evil empire. He says they're ahead in the arms race. One of the big things was the Soviets had new missiles, and we hadn't designed any new missiles in about 15, 20 years. Our missiles were all old. So during his 8 years in office, he spent $2 trillion on defense. That's the largest buildup of the American military in peacetime. One of the big parts of that, what really sucks up a lot of the money, was introduced in 1983, and that's the Strategic Arms Initiative, SDI, popularly known as Star Wars. And the reason it was called Star Wars was President Reagan proposed building a weapon system that would orbit the Earth to shoot down incoming Soviet missiles. There's a picture of it, the idea they launched their missiles, that's in the red, and there's our satellite system using other missiles and lasers. We would shoot down their missiles before they could hit the United States. October 1983, President Reagan orders the invasion of the tiny Caribbean island of Grenada. Grenada, at the time, had a government that appeared to be friendly to the Soviets, and actually other countries of the Caribbean asked President Reagan to invade Grenada and take out the communist government. The rumors were that the Soviets were building an air base there that would give them an operational range all over the Caribbean Sea, and a lot of the island nations there simply didn't like that. So Reagan does order the invasion. It took about 12 hours to overrun Grenada. You can see there's Jamaica and Haiti, and there's the U.S. Puerto Rico, and just down from that, there's Grenada. Tiny little island. Like I said, about 12 hours to overrun. And there's a map of the invasion. The Marines are landing. There's a 1980s movie with Clint Eastwood in it about the invasion of Grenada, and the name escapes me right now, but it's a good movie if you ever get a chance. There's a picture of some of our Marines operating in Grenada during the invasion. Lebanon, another place that President Reagan dealt with. Lebanon is a small country in the Middle East. It borders Israel and is to the north of Israel. Well, through the 70s, they were a very prosperous country, were a democratic nation, had done really well. And then Muslim insurgents and rebels moved in, and the government collapsed, and basically Lebanon went into anarchy. Right? And so the U.S., with some other countries, sent forces to Lebanon to help keep the peace. However, the Muslim forces there didn't like that, and these Muslim terrorist groups, they attack Israel from time to time since it borders Israel. They'll fire rockets into Israel. Every now and then it'll show up on the news, and then Israel ends up invading southern Lebanon to drive them out and try to kill them and capture them. Well, while American troops there in October of '83, the terrorists attacked the Marine barracks. They drove a truck full of explosives right into the barracks, and 241 Americans were killed. It was all over the news at that time, and the American forces stayed for a few more months. But in February of '84, President Reagan orders those troops to leave Lebanon, and it's been pretty much a terrorist battleground since. Very hard for the government to maintain any type of order in Lebanon. There's a picture of the Marine barracks after the bomb had gone off.